Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast, everyone. We are jumping into a really fascinating deep dive today.
Oh, it's definitely a fascinating one.
Right. So I want you to imagine for a second that, like, an alien civilization came to Earth, right?
I'm picturing it.
And they just observed our most common end-of-life rituals. They would literally watch us take millions of gallons of highly toxic embalming fluid and, thousands of tons of steel, copper, massive amounts of reinforced concrete, and just bury all of it in the ground every single year.
Yeah, it's wild when you frame it like that.
It is. They would probably assume we were trying to build some kind of subterranean fortress down there.
Right, like you're preparing for something.
Exactly. But we aren't. We're just doing what we've been told is standard practice. We are navigating basically the single most universal guarantee in human existence, which is death.
The one thing we all have in common.
Yeah. And we're doing it with this set of highly industrialized, environmentally heavy processes that, frankly, no one ever really questions.
Well, because to question it means you actually have to talk about it.
Bingo.
And if there's one thing our culture has just, completely perfected, it's the absolute pathological avoidance of talking about death.
Oh, completely. We run from it.
We really do. It's this fascinating societal blind spot. I mean, we live in an era where people will meticulously research and optimize literally everything.
Oh, yeah, from their morning coffee routine to, like, their sleep cycle.
Exactly. We demand transparency in our supply chains. We, track our macros. We optimize our retirement portfolios decades in advance.
We want to control everything.
Right. But the moment the timeline reaches its inevitable conclusion, all that optimization just abruptly stops.
The research stops.
The research stops and the silence begins.
Okay, let's unpack this, because today our mission for you, the listener, is to confront that exact silence.
Which is not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. We are looking at a massive cultural taboo today, and we're doing it through the lens of something that is currently just sending shockwaves through the funeral industry.
That total paradigm shift, really.
Yeah, we're talking about human composting, or, as the scientific community calls it, natural organic reduction.
Which is a very different term, and we'll get into that later.
Oh, we definitely will. We are pulling from this incredibly comprehensive set of materials today, anchored by an article excerpt called Breaking Taboos, talking openly about human composting.
It's a great piece.
It really is. And what becomes immediately clear reading through these sources is that, like, introducing a radically eco-friendly end-of-life option isn't just about, offering a new item on a menu.
Oh, not at all.
It's acting as a cultural wedge. It is forcing open this long overdue societal conversation about our legacy, the biology of our bodies, and the actual values we leave behind when we're gone.
Yeah, and to really grasp the magnitude of that disruption, we first have to map out the baseline of that silence you mentioned.
The avoidance factor.
Exactly, because this source material emphasizes that this avoidance isn't just some recent phenomenon. It's not just a modern quirk.
Right.
For multiple generations, conversations about death have been actively suppressed. They are softened, shrouded in euphemisms, and just surrounded by this incredibly dense layer of psychological discomfort.
It's like we've codified this silence into our actual manners.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
From a very young age, we're taught that bringing up mortality is, impolite.
Or morbid.
Morbid, yeah, or just somehow inappropriate for everyday conversation.
It's almost treated like a jinx, honestly.
How so?
Like, if you say the word out loud at the Thanksgiving dinner table, you might accidentally summon it into the room.
That is so true. We do treat it like a superstition.
We really do. We don't even say someone died. We say they passed away or we lost them.
As if they're just, misplaced in the grocery store.
Exactly. Oh, we lost him. Like he's just wandering around aisle 4.
Right. And that linguistic softening is a classic psychological defense mechanism.
It protects us.
Well, it feels like it protects us. By shielding ourselves from the raw biological reality, we create this temporary comfort zone.
But there's a cost to that, right?
A huge cost. The text highlights a severe cascading consequence to this avoidance. Because we refuse to have these conversations in the calm, rational light of day, we leave people woefully unprepared.
Unprepared for when the inevitable actually happens.
Yes. The avoidance mechanism creates an absolute logistical and emotional vacuum for surviving family members.
And see, I really struggle with the utility of this so-called polite silence.
Why is that?
Because we frame it as a courtesy, right? Like, oh, I won't bring this up. I'm shielding my loved ones from a dark topic. But aren't we actually just passing the burden of uncertainty directly onto the people we love most?
It's a heavy burden, too.
Right. I mean, it's like ignoring a massive group project until the night before it's due, except the stakes are, your own legacy and your family's well-being.
That's a really good analogy.
Think about the reality of the situation for a second. Your family is actively grieving. It is arguably the worst week of their entire lives.
They're devastated.
Totally devastated. And because you never had a conversation about what you wanted, they are sitting in a funeral director's office on a random Tuesday afternoon.
Exhausted.
Completely sleep-deprived. And they're being handed a price sheet with dozens of incredibly expensive permanent decisions to make.
And they have no map.
None.
Yeah.
The stakes are your physical remains and their psychological well-being. And they're just scrambling in the dark trying to guess what your values were.
Yeah, we think we're being kind by not talking about it, but we are actually leaving behind a chaotic administrative nightmare.
It's so unfair to them.
It really is.
Mm.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that chaotic nightmare is exactly what maintains the highly industrialized status quo you mentioned at the very beginning.
Right. The embalming fluid and the concrete vaults.
Exactly. The source text illustrates that this entrenched silence actively prevents proactive, value-driven decision-making.
Because you're making choices while you're in shock.
Yes. When people are forced to make decisions in the immediate aftermath of a death, they simply do not have the cognitive bandwidth to innovate.
Or to even think about the environment.
No, you're just surviving a trauma. So what do? You default to what is familiar.
The path of least resistance?
Right. You choose the standard burial or the standard cremation, not necessarily because it represents your life's philosophy.
But because it's what everyone else does?
Exactly. The silence basically guarantees that the default settings remain unchallenged.
And because that historical silence is so thick, you can't just gently tap on the glass to break it.
No, a tap won't work.
You can't just hand out a little pamphlet and expect society to change. Breaking it requires a massive conceptual shock.
A disruption.
Yes, it requires a completely different paradigm that stops people in their tracks and forces them to, look up from the default settings.
And that is the true function of natural organic reduction in our culture right now.
It's the shock to the system.
It is. The text frames human composting primarily as a conversation catalyst. Yes, obviously it is a physical process, but its sociological impact is far more profound.
It's doing more than just changing funeral logistics.
Way more. By introducing an option that is so fundamentally unfamiliar, so wildly outside the bounds of the typical burial or cremation binary, it shatters the silence simply by existing.
Because you can't ignore it.
Right. It invites this intense level of curiosity, which forces a rethinking of those long-held beliefs we just talked about.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. This method bypasses our immediate culturally programmed avoidance reflex.
Oh, totally.
Because normally, if you bring up funeral planning, people shut down. But when people hear the phrase human composting, their brains experience this momentary glitch.
A glitch, I like that.
Yeah, it doesn't fit into the mental filing cabinet labeled funeral. So instead of shutting down the conversation, they actually lean in.
They're confused but engaged.
Right. They ask, wait, what? How does that even work? And the moment they ask that question, the taboo is broken.
Because curiosity is the absolute antithesis of silence.
Exactly. You can't be curious and silent at the same time.
That cognitive glitch is a really vital mechanism for change. When presented with traditional burial or cremation, you're on autopilot.
The script is already written for you.
It is. You've seen it in 100 movies. You know the pacing, you know the visuals, you know the outcome.
The lowering of the casket, the black umbrellas.
All of it. But when natural organic reduction is introduced, the script vanishes. You are forced to articulate your values.
You have to actually think about what you want.
Yes. Even if a person hears about human composting and vehemently decides they don't want it, they still have to articulate why.
That's a great point. They have to form an argument.
Right. They have to engage with their own underlying philosophy regarding the human body and the earth.
It demands an active choice rather than just passive acceptance. And what the sources point out is that organizations are recognizing this moment of disruption.
They're stepping into the void.
Yeah, to provide guidance. Like, the funeral program site is highlighted specifically for its role here.
And they play a really important role.
They really do. They aren't trying to sell some specific narrative. Rather, they are providing the educational resources and, personalized materials needed when a society enters uncharted territory.
Because people need a map.
Exactly. They recognize that if you remove the old script, you have to provide people with the tools to write a new one.
They act as a critical bridge. Because cultivating curiosity, right, that's only the first step.
Right, there's still a big hurdle.
A massive hurdle. Because while the initial reaction to natural organic reduction might be intrigue.
Like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but introducing a paradigm that so intimately reconnects the human body to the earth inevitably triggers a profound amount of friction.
Oh, people get really uncomfortable.
Very. You are basically asking society to look directly at the most uncomfortable biological reality of our existence.
You mean the D word?
Yes.
Decomposition.
The ultimate taboo. The primary taboo, without a doubt. The text identifies society's profound psychological discomfort with decomposition as the single largest hurdle to this new paradigm.
It's the ick factor.
Essentially, yes. Intellectually, we all understand decomposition as a fundamental ecological process.
Right. We see a fallen tree in the forest breaking down into soil.
Or leaves turning into mulch.
Yeah, and we accept it. We're like, that's the circle of life. That's the natural order.
But applying that exact same biological process to the human form, it feels intensely invasive to the modern mind.
It grosses people out.
It does. We've spent centuries framing death outside of nature.
But wait, I have to push back on this societal squeamishness for a second.
Go for it.
Because there is a massive logical disconnect here. Traditional burial also involves decomposition.
Yes, absolutely it does.
It is the exact same biological reality.
It is.
The only difference is that we hide it. We put the body inside a wooden or metal box. We put that box inside a concrete vault.
A very expensive vault.
Yeah, and we bury it under 6 feet of dirt and manicured grass. We are essentially just building a very expensive slow-motion decomposition chamber that starves the earth of nutrients.
That's a very blunt way to put it, but yes.
So why are we collectively so okay with that reality as long as it's hidden, but the moment natural organic reduction explicitly acknowledges it, everyone panics?
What's fascinating here is the illusion of control.
Control, like trying to control nature.
Yes. The traditional burial model isn't about preventing decomposition entirely, though, embalming delays it. It's really about psychological preservation and boundaries.
Okay, unpack that for me.
The casket and the vault create this perceived rigid barrier between the human identity and the chaotic natural world.
Like a wall between us and the dirt.
Exactly. It is a profound attempt to freeze time. We fear decomposition because it represents the ultimate loss of individual control.
It's the dissolution of the ego.
The dissolution of the self into the collective environment? Yes. When you hide it in a vault, you don't have to visualize that loss of self.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Right. But natural organic reduction explicitly centers the very process we have spent centuries trying to block out.
That makes perfect sense, actually. We want to be the directors of our own narrative, even after the stage goes dark.
We crave those boundaries.
We do. But the source material provides a brilliant counter-narrative to that fear. They call human composting a guided version of a natural process.
And that phrasing is so important.
It completely changes the framing for me.
It's the absolute crux of their educational outreach.
It makes me think of the difference between something rotting on your counter and intentionally making sourdough bread or brewing kombucha.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Like if you just leave a mixture of flour and water sitting out on the counter, it rots. It attracts wild bacteria, it's chaotic, and it's unsanitary.
You definitely recoil from it.
Oh yeah, you throw it away. But if you guide that exact same biological mechanism, if you control the ambient temperature, if you feed the microbial starter the right balance of nutrients.
If you manage the environment.
Exactly. You are taking a wild, chaotic process of fermentation and turning it into something safe, productive, and life-sustaining.
And natural organic reduction is doing exactly that.
It isn't just throwing a body in the woods.
No, not at all. It is taking the wild chaos of natural decomposition and placing it into a highly engineered, temperature-controlled, perfectly balanced environment.
That sourdough analogy really hits the underlying science perfectly, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
Let's actually look at the mechanics of that guided environment for a moment, because the text emphasizes that education demystifies the taboo.
Yes, let's get into the science of how it actually works.
So in these specialized facilities, the body is placed in a stainless steel vessel alongside a very specific, carefully measured ratio of carbon-rich materials.
Like what kind of materials?
Usually a mix of wood chips, alfalfa, and straw.
Just plant matter.
Yes. And this specific carbon-to-nitrogen ratio creates the optimal environment for naturally occurring thermophilic microbes.
Microbes that are already in our bodies and the environment, right?
Exactly. And as these microbes do the work of breaking down the organic matter, they generate an immense amount of heat.
Wait, naturally, just from the microbes working.
Yeah, completely naturally. They bring the internal temperature of the vessel up to over 130 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow, that is really hot.
It is, and that heat is crucial because it destroys harmful pathogens, pharmaceuticals, viruses,
Making it totally safe?
right, rendering the resulting soil completely safe and sterile. The active phase takes about 30 days, followed by a curing process.
So it's essentially a high-tech, biologically accelerated return to nature.
That's a good way to phrase it.
It takes the chaos out of the equation and replaces it with this safe, comforting cycle.
It replaces chaos with predictability. By framing the event as guided, you dramatically reduce the human anxiety surrounding that loss of control we talked about.
Because it feels like a structured scientific process.
Exactly. You are surrendering to nature, yes, but within a structured, scientifically sound framework.
But the guardrails are up.
Right. And the source notes that this shift in understanding, from biological horror to ecological science, is what allows individuals to approach the concept with actual acceptance.
And resources like the funeral program site really reinforce this, right? By providing clear, compassionate information.
They do. They offer families a way to explore these mechanics without the confusion that usually accompanies the unknown.
Which is so needed when you're grieving.
Definitely.
But, once you strip away the fear of the biology, you free up the mind to actually consider the philosophy of the choice.
And that's where the next challenge lies.
Yeah, because getting past the ick factor of decomposition is only the first boss battle here.
The first of many.
The text points out that once people understand the science, they immediately collide with the weight of history.
History is heavy.
It is. They look to their cultural and spiritual roots to see if this new method is, for lack of a better word, allowed.
Right. Is it sanctioned by my faith?
Exactly. We are dealing with centuries, sometimes millennia, of deeply entrenched tradition.
And the tension between innovation and tradition is profound. I mean, human societies have incredibly long-standing rituals associated with burial and cremation.
Thousands of years of doing things a certain way.
Yes. And these rituals aren't just arbitrary rules, they are the foundational architecture of how communities process grief.
They give us something to hold on to.
Exactly. They offer a familiar rhythm during a time of immense emotional chaos. So introducing a radically new science-based method like natural organic reduction can feel, to many, like a severe departure from those customs.
Like they're doing something wrong.
Right. It can feel like an abandonment of heritage.
So what does this all mean for families who are caught in the middle?
It's a tough spot to be in.
It really is. Can a completely new 21st century scientific process truly honor an ancient religious tradition?
This is the big question.
Because I'm trying to picture how you reconcile the solemnity of like an ancient graveyard or a sacred cremation pyre with a modern stainless steel biological facility. It feels like a clash of two completely different worlds.
It does feel that way.
Yeah.
But it really just requires a shift in how we define tradition.
Okay, how so?
Well, the calm reality is that no cultural or religious tradition is entirely static. If we look back through human history, funeral rites have constantly morphed.
They change over time.
Constantly. They adapt to new technologies, changing geographical realities, evolving societal values.
Can you give an example of that kind of shift?
Think about the evolution of language.
Okay.
The words we use today sound completely different from the English spoken 500 years ago.
Oh, sure. Shakespearean English versus modern text slang.
Exactly. The syntax changes, the vocabulary updates, but the core human intention to communicate, to express love, to tell a story remains exactly the same.
The underlying meaning doesn't change.
Right. And traditions operate the exact same way. The physical mechanics of a burial are just the syntax.
Wow, that's a great way to put it.
The semantic, meaning the core function of the tradition, is remembrance, honoring the deceased, and supporting the grieving community.
And that's what really matters.
Yes. The source material argues that human composting is simply the newest adaptation of that syntax. It offers a modern approach that perfectly preserves the core intention of respect and remembrance.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The syntax changes, but the meaning stays the same.
Exactly.
And when you look closely at the theology itself, it's almost ironic.
How so?
Think about the most ubiquitous phrase in Western funeral traditions, Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Right, from the Book of Common Prayer.
Yes. And for centuries, that has been largely metaphorical, especially with traditional casket burial. You're inside a vault, you aren't really becoming dust to the earth for a very, very long time.
True.
But natural organic reduction takes that ancient spiritual theme and makes it completely literal.
It really does.
It is the most scientifically accurate manifestation of returning the body to the earth to become soil. It's wild that a brand new cutting-edge technology is actually pulling us closer to the original ancient poetry of these religious texts.
It brings it to life.
We are finally doing the thing we've been saying in prayers for thousands of years.
It actualizes the theology in a profound way. And the text notes that while religious institutions do move slowly, and some faiths are still actively evaluating their theological stance on human composting.
Which is to be expected.
Of course. But others are already recognizing this deep alignment with their core tenets of stewardship and returning to the earth.
That's really encouraging.
It is. The key recommendation from the source is open dialogue with spiritual leaders. Families really need space to explore how the scientific option fits within their specific belief systems.
I can't just do it in a vacuum.
No. And again, platforms providing customized memorial resources like the funeral program site help bridge this exact gap.
Oh, because they help plan the actual memorial part.
Exactly. They allow families to integrate their traditional prayers, scriptures, and cultural touchstones into a completely new physical process.
So you can still have a very traditional feeling ceremony.
Yes. They hold the emotional and spiritual space steady while the physical practice evolves around it.
That's so important because you can't just drop a heavy scientific concept onto a grieving family and expect them to immediately find comfort in the carbon to nitrogen ratio.
No, data doesn't comfort grief.
Right. You have to contextualize it within their human experience, which brings us to the mechanics of how society actually communicates this massive cultural shift to the masses.
Communication is everything here.
It is. The text leans heavily into the absolute importance of language, storytelling, and media representation.
Because the semantics of death hold immense power. The way we name a process dictates how we subconsciously evaluate it.
Words matter.
They do. The text states explicitly that language is the front line of breaking taboos.
Well, let's look at the terms themselves then. Human composting versus natural organic reduction.
Two very different vibes.
Completely different. They describe the exact same physical reality, but the psychological payload of those words is completely different.
Let's break that down.
Okay. Human composting is incredibly blunt. For a lot of people, it evokes, the pile of banana peels, coffee grounds, and yard waste in their backyard.
Which is not how you want to think about your grandma.
Exactly. It feels utilitarian, perhaps even a little jarring or disrespectful if you are trying to honor a beloved parent.
Right.
But natural organic reduction.
Yeah.
That sounds clinical, sure, but it also sounds gentle, intentional.
It has a dignity to it.
Yes, it frames the process not as waste disposal, but as a deliberate, respectful continuation of a biological cycle.
Exactly. Using clear, respectful terminology allows society to adopt a practice without feeling that they are degrading the sanctity of human life.
It gives them permission to accept it.
It does. The text argues that the right vocabulary is what elevates the process from a fringe ecological experiment to a logical, dignified continuation of life.
But terminology is only the foundation.
Right. The text rapidly moves to the role of storytelling, arguing that data and accurate terminology can only take a culture so far.
People need more than just the right words.
Personal narrative is the actual engine of human adoption.
I completely agree with that. We are fundamentally hardwired for stories, not raw data sets.
Oh, humans are storytelling creatures.
We really are. Like, you can show me all the carbon offset charts in the world. You can explain that traditional burial uses millions of gallons of embalming fluid, and natural organic reduction uses 0.
And you'd probably understand the math.
I might nod my head and acknowledge the math, sure. But math doesn't change deeply held cultural practices. What changes behavior is a story.
Give me an example of what you mean.
Okay, if you told me about a family who used this process for their mother, right, and how they received the rich, nutrient-dense soil a month later, and they took that soil to plant a dogwood tree in the very garden where she used to read to her grandchildren.
Wow.
That hits me right in the chest. That makes the concept real. It transforms a sterile scientific process into a beautiful, tangible legacy.
That distinction between data and narrative is crucial. And I want to address a nuanced dynamic here. the relationship between broader media and intimate family storytelling.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because media coverage, documentaries, news features, scientific articles serves a very specific function.
What's their role?
Well, as the text notes, providing accurate public information replaces fear with knowledge.
It clears up the myths.
Exactly. It reduces the stigma, corrects the horror movie misconceptions about decomposition, and provides the intellectual permission for people to even consider the option. Media normalizes the science.
Okay, so the media provides the how, but the personal stories provide the why.
Precisely. You need the documentaries to explain the safety of the thermophilic microbes.
So people don't think it's just rotting in a field.
Right. But you desperately need the family stories to explain the emotional resonance.
The heart of it.
Yes. As more families share their experiences, the process shifts from abstract theory to a relatable human experience.
And the source material points out how crucial dedicated platforms are for facilitating this storytelling, right?
Very crucial. This is where organizations like the Funeral Program site provide immense value.
What do they actually provide?
They supply the actual canvases, the memorial programs, the digital tributes, the tangible keepsakes that help families articulate these unique journeys.
So they give them a place to tell the story.
Exactly. They're giving families the tools to write the new cultural script for what a modern, ego-conscious farewell actually looks like.
And who is most eagerly picking up the pen to write that new script?
The young people.
Exactly. The sources are very clear about the demographic that is actively shifting this landscape. We are looking at a massive generational shift.
A huge one, yes. The text highlights how millennials and Generation Z are driving this broader cultural change.
Which makes total sense.
It does.
Yeah.
These are demographics that have grown up with a persistent, ambient awareness of climate change and environmental degradation.
It's been in the news their entire lives.
Right. They already prioritize sustainability in their daily lives, in how they consume goods, how they travel, what they eat.
Metal straws, electric cars, thrifting.
Exactly. So it is only logical that they are now projecting those exact same values onto their inevitable exit from the planet.
Environmentalism has transitioned from a lifestyle choice into an end-of-life legacy.
Beautifully said.
And what I find so fascinating in the research is this concept of reverse mentoring within families.
I love this part.
Right. For decades, the older generation dictated the funeral traditions. The parents told the kids what to do.
This is the family plot. This is what we do.
Yes. But now, younger generations are bringing these eco-values to the Thanksgiving dinner table.
They're stirring the pot.
They are. They are the ones initiating the uncomfortable conversations about human composting. And in doing so, they are forcing open the planning conversations that their parents and grandparents spent their entire lives actively avoiding.
They're breaking the generational silence we talked about at the top of the show. And this raises an important question regarding how we view the end of life as a whole.
What's the question?
Well, the text states that this younger generation's push for sustainable options inherently encourages proactive planning.
Because it's not the default option yet.
Right. Because natural organic reduction isn't the default, you have to plan for it. You have to document your wishes.
You can't just leave it up to chance.
No. So the culture is shifting from viewing end-of-life planning as a morbid, terrifying chore to viewing it as the ultimate act of environmental and familial care.
Wow, it totally flips the script.
It really does.
It takes an act rooted in fear, avoiding the topic of death entirely, and turns it into an act of profound generosity.
Generosity is the perfect word for it.
Because you are doing two incredible things, right? First, you are giving your family the gift of a clear, documented roadmap, so they aren't scrambling in the dark when you're gone.
You're saving them from that Tuesday afternoon panic in the funeral director's office.
Yes. And second, you are literally giving your physical self back to the ecosystem to foster new life. You are solving the logistical nightmare and the ecological problem at the exact same time.
It's a win-win. By discussing these wishes in advance, the text argues, families arrive at a state of clarity and peace of mind that the previous era of silence could never offer.
It removes the friction from the grieving process.
It does. And providing practical tools to document these final wishes is essential for this transition. It is the movement from avoidance to intentionality.
So to synthesize this entire journey we've been on today for the listener,
Let's bring it all together.
Breaking the taboos around human composting is about so much more than just choosing a new physical method for handling a body.
It's just the tip of the iceberg.
It really is. It's a proxy for a much larger cultural awakening. We are moving away from an era of silence, environmental burden, and passive acceptance.
We're waking up.
Yes, we are moving toward a future defined by transparency, deep sustainability, and reclaiming personal choice at the very end of life.
Which is incredibly empowering.
It is. It is fundamentally about changing the vocabulary of death to create space for honest, meaningful conversations while we are still here to actually have them.
Ultimately, the source text leaves us with a really powerful conclusion.
What's that?
Talking openly about natural organic reduction is not just a conversation about death, it is deeply about life.
It's about how we live right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is about the legacy we actively build, the values we choose to carry forward, and how our society is evolving to value a deeper connection both with each other and with the natural world that sustains us.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Something to think about.
We've talked a lot about what happens at the end. But if natural organic reduction fundamentally redefines your physical legacy as something that literally gives life back to the earth,
Right.
if your eventual end becomes the literal nutrient-dense foundation for a new forest, a new garden, new growth,
Yeah.
how might that reality change the way you view your relationship with nature right now?
While you're still alive.
Exactly. How does it change the way you walk on the soil today, knowing it might be exactly what you return to and nurture tomorrow?
That's a beautiful thought.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We crafted this exploration specifically for you to help navigate the fascinating evolution of how we remember, how we return, and how we finally find the courage to talk openly about it all.